inverted triangle.
Next up, we had DeMarcus Johnson taking on Amir Sadallah. I personally took DeMarcus. I took DeMarcus Johnson only because I thought Amir, he beat Peter Sabata in his last fight. Yep. He lost to Dong Young Kim before that. DeMarcus Johnson, I personally thought he would have.
It was a fun fight.
Tapped him out. That's what I was hoping for, and but. I have nothing to argue. The
finish was pretty impressive.
Amir looked really good.
As soon as he got that hand around his face, done.
Smashing the elbows. Oh, that was
he tapped. I didn't even realize. I thought the referee stopped the fight. It was DeMarcus Johnson who tapped. When they announced it, too,
I think the referee was like in the midst of stopping it, and but Johnson did tap.
When they announced the decision, they said it was submission due to strikes.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that decision there.
I'm actually happy that Amir Sadallah won. Yeah. Even though I was voting against him,
he's a fun fighter.
Yeah. I'm glad, especially that he's still really young in his MMA career. So next up, we got the co-main event,
Johnson and Hardy. Everyone thought it was going to be like a stand-up war, and it ended up being the direct opposite.
The decision ended up going to Anthony Johnson. Winning the unanimous decision.
It. You guys called Hardy.
The only reason I called Hardy, 2 straight losses. First one obviously getting dominated. He
said he was going to come out. He didn't do much.
You think he was at the top of his career when he was facing GSP, and he got dominated only because his wrestling wasn't up to par.
GSP and Conde
he didn't look any better.
Exactly. Conde, he just got knocked the hell out.
Yep.
And this fight, Anthony Johnson, his base is wrestling.
Exactly, and he's much bigger than you.
Exactly. So you would think that you would... Obviously, everybody was expecting this to be a stand-up war. Mm-hmm. But in the back of your mind...
smart. He exploited his weakness.
In the back of your mind, Anthony Johnson is coming off a loss. He's coming off a huge layoff. So obviously, he's going to go to his roots and stick to a winning formula.
It's no reason for Hardy not to train his wrestling.
Exactly. And...
just because he expected a stand-up war?
He was saying...
Because Anthony Johnson said it was going to be a stand-up war? That isn't...
He was staying a little active on the ground, though. I'm not saying that it was...
He was going for one move.
He was going for the Kimura.
Just the Kimura.
Repeatedly.
That's all... That's all
he reverted to.
I think you mentioned it. You mentioned it, right? That it seemed that that's all he trained as a defense off his back. A Kimura.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only thing that seemed like what he was going for. It was just like every time he was reaching for something, he was just trying to pull out Anthony Johnson's arm. He couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Anthony Johnson just
he dominated him.
He looked like a deer in headlights when he was on his back.
Yeah, he did.
Honestly, he did.
He didn't know what to do.
He didn't know what to do. Johnson was just big and just smothering him, and his wrestling was just too overwhelming.
All right. Main event time.
It was all right, I guess. It wasn't anything.
Phil Davis and Nogueira.
I expected more from Phil Davis.
Personally, Phil Davis, in my opinion, won 29-28, but the overall thing was 30-27.
Yeah, I thought I gave Nogueira the first round simply because he stuffed all the takedowns and kept it standing, and he did more in the standing.
Well, like we were watching the fight on our way here.
They might have given it to him to the clinch. Right?
Phil Davis was really controlling Nogueira in the clinch. When he couldn't get him down, they immediately went to the clinch But I thought that was more Nogueira stuffing his takedown successfully, so it should have kind of swayed his way. Like I said, I gave the first round to Nogueira and the second
and then I gave the
Phil
second
Davis. But the only thing is, Phil Davis, I thought he would have been a little bit more dominating.
Yeah, but then again, he did say he had a really bad camp, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned that.
He mentioned that in the post-fight to Rogan.
And during his interview, so maybe that had something to do with it, but...
You can't take anything away from Nogueira though. He's really good on the really great jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? The furthest Phil Davis ever got was half guard, and that was in the third round. So barely.
Well, even Davis has said that I'm still learning. He's even said it himself. He actually wanted to take a year off, but the UFC didn't want him to.
Yep.
And he wanted to take a year off pretty much to learn more, pretty much to get better. So it's he has a lot of potential. Considering he's 5-0 in the UFC with a big win over Little Nog now. He's only going to get better. Yeah. So I hope he goes right. Who do you think is a good next opponent for him?
The first names I brought up was Hamill and Jackson, the winner of that. The only thing...
I don't know, the winner of that is too much.
Exactly. Yeah, you made a really good point, and in that, like, Hamill and Jackson are far further up the ladder than Phil Davis.
And not only that, if Hamill wins... then that skyrockets his career, and then a Davis match would be like a step down.
Yeah, a step down.
From taking out Jackson on After Silva pulled out of the fight. So I don't think they would do that fight.
I
was thinking Forrest Griffin.
Yeah, I was just about to say
Forrest Griffin.
But personally, I would rather see Shogun and Forrest too.
Yeah, that's what I was
So maybe a
saying,
matchup
too.
with Rich Franklin. Even though
Rich Franklin is a name, but I think Davis is going to dominate him
think
simply
Franklin
based
is a
on
good
size.
matchup.
Even though Franklin lost his last fight, it's still a name.
It's a bigger name than Little Long, I find.
Yeah. He can pose a challenge.
Even another name that I brought was Thiago Silva, because he's if he comes back,
that might be a punishment fight. Exactly.
Yeah, if he comes back, it's a step down from Brandon Vera.
Yeah.
Well,
no.
Never mind.
A step down from Rampage Jackson. A step down from Rampage Jackson.
I take that back. Yeah. I take that back. Yeah. But yeah, it would be a good comeback fight for Silva. It's a good challenge. Silva's stand-up is really good.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, Silva...
You don't think he would be able to take Phil Davis?
No, I think he would, but I don't think Silva...
I think Phil Davis might lose that fight.
Phil Davis might lose that fight against Silva?
I think he might lose that fight. Thiago Silva is very underrated.
I think Silva's going to come out in his first fight back off this whole layoff and look sluggish, and ring rust is going to be very apparent. And Phil Davis...
I don't think so at all. I think
Phil Davis would just roll right through him.
No, not Thiago Silva. No way.
I'm taking that stance right now.
I might even
think
actually.
Phil Davis
I could even
right
see myself favoring Thiago Silva.
I think if Phil Davis beats Thiago Silva, it'll be more of a repeat of what happened last night. In my opinion.
Kind of controlling the wrestling and stuff like that.
With more stand up in it.
But you have to keep in mind that Thiago
Silva
Silva is much stronger. And he can use that to his advantage when using his jiu-jitsu.
Especially look at the fight with Rashad Evans with Thiago Silva.
Thiago Silva had a bad back, and he was still getting up like nothing.
Exactly. So I think he'll have a...
Take this into consideration, though. Like you said, Davis felt he was hurting. He wasn't 100%. And he held off Nogueira. He's going to take this time off after this fight now. Get ready for his first fight back. And Thiago Silva, I think he's just not going to be up to par. Not at all.
All right, whatever. You know what?
I think
we're jumping the gun anyway. It's not like that fight's gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the name you guys are throwing, and that's
but still, I don't know.
Well, that was our quick review of Fight Night 24, which took place in Seattle last night, headlined by Nogueira and Phil Davis. Once again, mediocre card in my opinion. Like the last last two fights.
Mediocre.
I had more hype around them. That's what
headliners were mediocre.
The first two fights were good.
Indeed,
like they're exciting.
Can we mention McCorkle 1 second? Just quickly.
Yeah, we were going to talk about that in the next segment.
I'm sorry, I thought we were just going to... Okay, but...
Okay, so our next segment is going to be involving Mr. Samir Kadi. We're going to be calling him up right now, so I'm just going to take a little break, get him on the phone, and get everything set. So stay put, and we will be back.